I found a hitman's kill list. The last name on it is mine. I found the list at my job. Of all places, I thought. My job of running an apartment complex alone had already presented its own host of challenges. Pest control and problematic customers were constant. I enjoyed it well enough. I was able to keep myself entertained during the downtime. A part of my routine was to walk around the rows of units. Barriers, controlled access entry points and one-way spikes prevented intruders. There were also surveillance cameras, even if they were there more for show. They were old and broken down. I enjoyed the saunter around the place. It was an excuse to get away from the desk and exercise a little to get some fresh air. One night, I walked by unit number 26. I was contemplating where I would take my girlfriend for our one-year anniversary when I heard a splash below me. I looked down and saw a puddle. A decent amount of liquid was streaming between the crack of the garage door and the concrete. I went back to the office and grabbed a spare key to the unit. When I returned, I unlocked the door, fumbled the latches, bent at the knees and slid it open. I did find the source of the flood. It was a space heater still plugged in. The owner who had failed to turn it off had also left a 2-liter of soda next to it. That should have been the end of my investigation. The contents of the unit caught my attention. I had seen some weird things in my time. Hoarders and those with attachments to the oddest of objects was not uncommon. This unit was different. On the left wall was a cork board with Polaroids of different faces at random locations. The photographs only had one commonality. The individuals were out and about in their daily lives, unaware how someone was taking snapshots of them. On the right wall was a chalkboard with various addresses scribbled on it. The information was all placed in a circle, their numbers and words within the lines. Centered on the far wall was a clay musical instrument. I recognized it as an Aztec death whistle. Below it was a desk which was clear of everything except a single item, a black notebook. On the front of it was a sticker with an illustration of a human skull. This was not like the band logo for the Misfits or an advertisement for a random tattoo parlor. It had layers of desiccated and scarred flesh. The grin seemed to be more alive than a motionless picture should have been. Something beckoned me to turn the first page. I knew I was committing a violation of privacy by opening someone's journal or letters, yet I had to. The page had a list of 8 names from top to bottom written in legible print. Each pen stroke brushed towards the bottom of the ruled line. Next to each cognomen was a date, and they were recent. I secured the unit and went back to the office. I could remember some of the names, so I googled them. They had all died violent and sudden ends. Not a single one of the deaths resulted in an arrest and prosecution of any key suspect. Later that night, I called the person above me in rank while I was in the office. Timothy Hart was someone I had never met, but had received many emails from. I had talked to him over the phone a handful of times. I told him what I saw. Describing everything proved to be a challenge, and I realized I sounded crazy. So you searched his property without his permission or knowledge? I suppose so, I said. It's weird as all. I don't care how bizarre his hobbies are, I'm not looking for anyone to get sued. Also, the owner is someone who's always been polite to me when I used to work on site there. Dave Avon is his name. He visited once a week sometimes and even tipped. Never had a problem with him before, and I'd hate to have him feel like we were encroaching on his personal life. I hung up, feeling sheepish, though I also thought the new procedure was questionable at best. Still, I should have known he would respond that way. After all, what proof did I have of any wrongdoing? The next day, I was in my lounge chair in the living room reading something on my Kindle app when the front desk's bell rang. I walked into the office and saw a man who was at least 6'2" with a military-style buzz cut. The sun glinted off the silver truck parked outside. He stood there with his arms folded and had an expression of annoyance or anger. "I'd like to file a complaint," he said. "No problem," I said as I logged into the computer database and asked him for identification. "Unit 26 is mine," he said. I felt cold as I looked up his name. I worried about what he was going to say, although I had a good idea. I walked into space today and there was water damage everywhere. Now, I don't blame anybody here for that. What bothers me is how somebody has gone through my stuff. Nothing is missing, but things are out of place. My memory is sharp, and so is my mental catalog of what I own and organize. So what I'd like to know is if you guys have had any incidents of breaking and enterings recently. Yes, I lied, feeling a bit of sweat on my brow. Police reports already filed. They haven't caught who did it yet, but I'm sure they're doing their best. I'm so glad nothing's taken, Mr. Avon. Well, that's good to know. It would be a better business practice if you guys were to reach out when something's tampered with. I made monthly payments for my little slice of space here since 15 years ago. Sorry for the inconvenience. He leaned in, and he wore a cologne which smelled of oak moss. A strong hint of tobacco was also there. I would hate to find out that this is a targeted attack against me for my religious or spiritual beliefs. The artifacts I collect are of no one's interest but mine. I have a peeve against people who are intolerant. You're a young man, you agree with that on principle, don't you? I imagine your whole generation does. Or it should, anyways. Yes, I said, feeling a lump rise in the back of my throat. Good. I know some of the other owners of the units around me. I'm going to ask them if they've had the same thing happen to them, to make sure I wasn't singled out. God help the man who chose my storage space. A sense of terror filled me from that point on. I awoke from a nightmare which had been plaguing me ever since my chat with Avon. In it, I was in my bed, when a power drill the size of an airplane wing pierced through my roof. It headed straight between my eyes. It was a chaotic maelstrom of drywall, insulation and concrete in the form of a spinning machine of death. I snapped back to the real world from the hypnagogic state. I was sweating heavily. I wondered if he would press charges against me for having overstepped my training. If he were to find out, my life could get complicated. I tried to shrug off these pessimistic and intrusive thoughts. I went the extra mile at work, volunteering for any kind of chore that a renter needed done. One morning, I found my Google account hacked. I received a security email notifying me that someone had accessed my information. I immediately followed the steps to remedying another intrusion. The same thing happened the next day. I heard a dog barking outside in the middle of the night. I rolled over and tried to muffle my sense of hearing with pillows. The yelping was so persistent and loud. I stood and went through the office and stared out through the glass partition. "Where are you going?" Andrea asked as she peeled the blanket away from her face. "I'll be right back," I said. There was no animal in sight once I got to the front entranceway, but a baby blue basket which sat on the porch. Roses surrounded it. A papier-mâché skull with colored pinstripes aligned its mug, its grin wide and friendly. The head of a baby doll also sat there. The plastic had warped from excess heat. I did not know what to make of this gift, other than the letter folded into a neat square. I went back to the bedroom, grabbed the keys, returned to the office and unlocked it to get a better look. I unfolded the letter and it had a simple sentence. "How do you like having someone pry into everything you thought was private?" The noise of glass shattering from the rear of the property erupted behind me. I ran to the back, but not before grabbing a poker from the fireplace. I went into the bedroom and saw Andrea sitting up, a look of grave concern on her face. "Where did that noise come from?" Andrea asked. I peeled back the curtain and stared out onto the road. A sedan sat against a nearby dirt lot, and someone had busted the passenger side rear window. I did another perimeter check, placed the poker where I found it, and went to bed, and held Andrea. I went online the next day and searched through some news articles about the community. It was a part of my daily practice, but what I did not expect was to see Yvonne's name in one of the headlines. "Local man slain," the title read. The piece went on to explain how, shortly after midnight on a Monday, Yvonne got stabbed. Police found him with several wounds in an alleyway only a block away from a bath shop. The perpetrator was not caught. Andrea and I were in bed. As I pressed her close to me, I almost fell apart. The events of the last couple weeks had started to gnaw at me, and I felt the need to tell her the story of the storage unit. Also, she had been very curious earlier if I had any knowledge of where the baskets may have come from. What if he's a hitman and the group he works for is going to come after me? I asked. I should get the cops involved. I didn't have anything to do with his knife attack, but in case someone tries to accuse me, you know? It was karmic retribution for the horror he was trying to push onto you, she said. I asked her how she could be so confident in such an outlandish prospect. "The way you describe the notebooks lead me to believe he was signaling his ill intent," she said. She managed to talk some sense into me, and it calmed my nerves for the days that followed. Until I got a ring from the doorbell. It was at 3 a.m. Nobody was there. But something was. At my feet was a familiar gift. It was the same basket. Everything was the same from before, except for the doll head. As I picked it up to look closer, I realized it wasn't a doll head. It had what looked like blood-drawn X's on each of the eyes, and the figure looked more like a woman. It looked like my girlfriend. Instantly after, I heard glass shatter, covering the sound of a muffled scream in my house.